When in Africa, we went all the way down to TY Island. It is this island sort of in the middle of this river. And on this island, what makes it unique is they have hippos, but not just normal hippopotami. That sounds weird. I'm going to call them hippopotamuses. They have pygmy hippos. Did you know those existed? They're actually endangered. They're evidently people like to capture them and use them as footballs. No, I make that up. But they have been hunted, and every once in a while you'd kind of drive along the roads and you would see people selling bush meat. Bush meat is just a kind of a generic term for any kind of animal that you kill in the jungle and you can eat it. It could be a rat, it could be a snake, it's just protein. Or it could be a poor little pygmy hippo. And these little guys, they would sort of remind you of a watermelon, but extremely elusive, very, very hard to find. They're nocturnal creatures, which means they only come out at night. And there were a lot of them on TY Island. And so we went out on this tour with this local guy who wow, he smoked like a chimney, this guy did. But very, very intense with how we walked through the jungles, and he said, stay close together or else you will get lost and we will never find you again. You know, just scaring the living daylights out of you. But we saw chimpanzees there on TY Island, also very, very fast and elusive creatures. Now you may think, no, I see those all the time at the zoo. No, these things, they move fast when they're out in the wild. Chimpanzees, orangutans, gorillas. I don't think we actually saw gorillas. At one time we did go to a chimpanzee sanctuary, and they were actually caged in there. But they were caged in for a purpose. It's so that the people could take care of them, because they were like in poor health or something like that. So they had this sanctuary, this refuge to help these poor little animals get back on their feet. It was a really cool thing. So TY Island, we went all the way down there, and I remember sitting there with Liz, and Lewis was there, and then our local African friend, his name is Bassie, we invited him along. Such a sweet, really, really nice guy. And we were all sitting there around this table outside, and we had paid for dinner, and this cook was going to go and cook us something delicious. I don't know what it was, but it was going to be delicious. He promised us that. And there's something you must realize in Sierra Leone. The people there can be very formal, and it's because it was a colony, and you know, the reason why they call it Freetown is that a lot of the slaves, when they were freed, they came back to Freetown, hence Freetown, and they came back there and established themselves. And so you see these really old colonial style houses just out in the middle of the jungle. It's really bizarre to see these things. You expect to see like a mud hut, but no, it's a very Western style house. And so consequently, these people have adopted some very formal language from colonial Britain. And so we asked this fellow, pardon me, but are we going to have dinner shortly? And we weren't doing it like in an entitled sort of way. We're talking like we've been sitting there for an hour and a half. We're like, should we say something? And so Lewis did so. He did it very politely. And this man, the cook, who is also our tour guide, as a matter of fact, he was also the boat master. He drove us across the river in this boat. But he stopped and he paused very, very regally. And he said, wouldn't you agree that anything that is done in haste is typically not worthwhile. And this was in response to Lewis politely asking, are we going to be having dinner shortly? And Lewis, of course, his response to this rather profound question, Lewis's response was, well, yes, I agree with that. And then the man responded with, dinner will be served shortly. And he went back to the kitchen. Very, very formal, if you know what I mean. And a few of these words that they also kind of peppered in with their Creole dialect, which Creole, not Creole, as in New Orleans, it's Creole. It sort of sounds like a Jamaican sort of sound. As a matter of fact, I played some Jamaican music, or it was actually Bermuda music, and I couldn't understand a word that this guy was saying. And I played it for my friend Bassie. And I said, do you understand what this guy is saying? He said, oh yeah, he's talking about his girlfriend and how they broke up, and he just went on. I said, I can't understand a word this guy's saying. And he's from Bermuda. It's like, that's on the opposite side of the Atlantic Ocean. You do realize that, right? And he just smiled, big bright smile, and he said, yes, Beau, we're all one family. Okay, cool. So back to this guy who spoke very formally and peppered in this very informal way of speaking, like, how are you today would be how the body, which is, how is the body? How is your body? How the body? And the response would be, if you're feeling fine, if your body is fine, you say, the body fine. The body is fine. Or, morning, how's you sleep? How the body? Good morning, how did you sleep? How's the body? And your response would be, I tell God thank you, which would be, I tell God thank you. By the way, that's probably very rough. If you know Creole, don't laugh at me too much about that. But very informal like that. And yet, when we went out on these treks, these tours out into the jungle, they'd be talking all in this informal, talking so fast you couldn't even understand them, and then they'd pause and they'd turn to you and say, stay close to your guide. Your safety is paramount. And then they'd go back to talking and stuff like that. Like, where did that come from? These people live in the jungle, and yet they're talking, more properly than I do. And I'm a native English speaker, for Pete's sake. So that, for the rest of the trip, was kind of our joke, was stay close to the tour guide. Your safety is paramount.